This is Optimal Living Daily, episode 214, Shower Thoughts, The Creative Power of Autopilot by Kristin Wong of the wildwong.com, and I'm Justin Malik. I'm skipping the intro again today because I want to get to this reading as soon as possible. I stumbled across this one and was immediately drawn in because of the topic, the writing style, and there's science behind it. It's got all the stuff I like in a post, so I commented on the blog with my own experience of the topic and asked Kristin if I could read it on the podcast, and she was happy to share it. You can actually see my comment and me asking her for permission on her post. It's linked in the episode description. And actually, I'm going to encourage you to comment too at the end. You'll see why after I read you the post. So who is this Kristin Wong of the wildwong.com? Awesome site name, by the way. So Kristin is a full-time freelance writer. She was laid off in 2013, which coincidentally is when I left my full-time job to venture into the riskier, so we have that in common. And while she did look for a new job, she was doing freelance writing and producing videos at the same time, and that actually started to make more money than her previous job, so she's been freelancing ever since. She launched a blog about frugal living and expanded into what is her current site, the Wild Wong, which covers finance, career, and everything in between. And if you're even remotely interested in making money as a freelancer, she gives away a copy of her guide, The Freelancer's Toolkit, if you subscribe on her site. So that's another reason to visit her. And this is getting a little long, so let's hear Kristin's post and start optimizing your life. Shower Thoughts, The Creative Power of Autopilot by Kristin Wong of the wildwong.com. Creativity is a fickle little beast. Sometimes the harder you try to harness creativity, the farther away you push it. Some of my best ideas happen when I'm not trying to think about anything at all, like during a commute. In fact, that's what I miss most about working in an office, driving home in the afternoon. It was relaxing and somehow it got the creative juices flowing. Some people feel the same way in the shower or while they're cleaning the house. Either way, the idea is the same. Your actions become automatic and your mind wanders. It's an unintentional break. And breaks are powerful. The internet refers to the creative autopilot phenomenon as quote-unquote shower thoughts, but psychologists use a more scientific term, the default mode network. Accessing your brain's default mode network. The default mode network, DMN, is made up of the parts of your brain that work quietly in the background, sort of like your subconscious. It's all the stuff that goes on in your head while you go about your day. You miss your mom, you have a great story idea, you wonder how an old friend is doing. When we activate the DMN, we go into default mode, also known as autopilot, and tap into those thoughts. When I'm driving home on a familiar route, I'm in default mode. You've probably been there, right? You hit the road after work and next thing you know, you're at your destination. You have no real memory of the trip because you were on autopilot. During that time, you tapped into your network and that's when the magic happens. Your mind is free to wander and that's when you really tap into your creativity. Here's how one psychologist sums it up over at Wired. Quote, "You become less aware of your environment and more aware of your internal thoughts," unquote. It's probably not the safest thing while you're behind the wheel, to be honest, but when you make the same drive every day, it's only natural to go through the motions while your mind logs into the default mode network. Overall, scientists seem to think you need two main components to access the DMN, relaxation and distraction. Relaxation. When you're relaxed, your brain releases dopamine, which is also linked to creativity. This explains why, even though I was on autopilot, I didn't get much of a creative boost out of my morning commute, only my evening one. In the morning, I was wired, caffeinated, and anxious about the day. After work, I was relaxed. Distraction. Second, you need distraction from your conscious mind. This is why endlessly browsing Instagram, Facebook, or Twitter does not boost my creativity. As mindless as it may seem, the conscious mind is still at work, processing all of the photos and status updates. It can't just be a habit. The task has to distract you from your conscious thought and allow your mind to go wherever it wants, unobstructed by photos of people's lunches. Embrace monotony and relaxation. In other words, if you want to tap into the DMN, you have to embrace two things: relaxing environments and monotonous tasks. Friendly PSA, even though I'm using my commute as an example here, it's probably not a good idea to get too relaxed and stop paying attention to your environment when you drive. It happens, I know, but it's not safe. You can't have one or the other. You need both. For example, meditation is relaxing, but it doesn't really work because you're supposed to focus. It's the opposite of mindless monotony, which is the other thing you need. Similarly, I once went to the beach to brainstorm a creative idea for a project. It didn't work. I was relaxed, but I wasn't distracted. My conscious mind was taking in the beautiful horizon, the glistening water, and all of the people around me. It was the opposite of monotony. I wasn't distracted from my conscious thought at all. Plus, relaxing for the purpose of coming up with a good idea is counterproductive. These days, I log into my default networking by cleaning. It sounds boring, but that's exactly the point. It's a boring task that I don't have to think about at all, and it's so routine, my subconscious mind is free to wander. I work from home, so I'm fortunate that I can kind of do this whenever I want. So I usually tackle some cleaning project during my lunch break and set a timer for 40 minutes or so. I zone out, and more times than not, I come up with a great idea for something. My subconscious would get to a place where I think, that's interesting. And then I'm jolted back to my conscious where I think, oh yeah, and that'd make for a great article. Let me find a pen and write this down. During that time, I'm not focused on a solution. There's no pressure, the bulk of my work is done for the day, and I'm calm. It's a lot safer than zoning out during a commute, and bonus, I've got clean floors. You just listened to the post titled Shower Thoughts, The Creative Power of Autopilot by Kristin Wong of the wildwong.com. I mentioned at the top of the show that you can see my comment on her post, where I not only asked for permission to read this to you, but also shared how I used to tap into my default mode network as a kid, and how I do it now. And that's actually what I want to hear from you. Where do you come up with your ideas? Or what's that thing for you where you're distracted yet doing something monotonous and you come up with great ideas? I really want to know. I'm not asking rhetorically. Come by this post at thewildwong.com and leave a comment, and then you can also check out my response and how I used to do it and how I do it now. I'd like to hear how you tap into the psychological phenomenon, and maybe I could try yours out also. The exact link to her post is in the episode's description here in the podcast app of your choice, or you should be able to find it if you just go to thewildwong.com. And I think that does it for today. Hopefully I'll see your comments there. I'm going to be reading them. And tomorrow's going to be a Wellness Wednesday edition of the show, so stay tuned for that, where your optimal life awaits.
Hey, this is Dan from the Optimal Finance Daily podcast, which is a lot like this show, except more focused on personal finance. Justin handpicks the best posts he can find from blogs and authors like Ramit Sethi, Mr. Money Mustache, and more, and I read them to you 5 days a week. So if you enjoy this podcast, come on over and subscribe to Optimal Finance Daily too. And together, we'll optimize your financial life.
You've been listening to Optimal Living Daily. Be sure to hit the subscribe button to stay up to date on each new episode, and head to oldpodcast.com. That's OLDpodcast.com for a free gift, as well as more actionable tips and resources to help you maximize your potential. Thanks for joining us, and remember, your optimal life awaits.